Welcome to the Tachiai podcast. We're looking at another dislocated Basho. This one should have been in Kyushu, but it's going to be in Tokyo this time due to COVID-19. But I have to say I'm very enthusiastic for the return of sumo. Joining me on the podcast today is none other than Tachiai founder and creator Andy. Say hello.
Good morning, Bruce. How are you?
I'm happy to be here, man. And I am delighted to announce that our man in foreign lands is once again in foreign lands. Josh, say hello.
Hey, you guys, I hate when I dislocate my Basho, but at least we're able to move ahead with the podcast.
Well, the Basho is being splinted, and if necessary, a cast has been put on it, and we'll wrap it and clean it daily. But let's get straight into what's going on. There's been a lot of interesting developments, some significant changes over both July and September, and we're looking at a slowly progressing, gradual move back towards some kind of normalcy in the sumo world. And really excited for this November tournament in Tokyo. But let's get into the reaction to the Banzuke. A lot of the Banzuke was kind of predictable at the top end, and our resident prognosticator, OK Sumo, did although he's very hard on himself, did an absolutely smash-up job of predicting what was going on. And it gave us an early look at what's going on. And I think the first thing I have to mention is, of course, shin-Ozeki Shodai. Now, a lot of readers of the blog think that I've got some sort of supernatural hate for Shodai. Nah, it was just that he was underperforming. Well, the man's become an Ozeki now. There's no more underperforming on that guy. And he's finally come into what Kintameyama used to refer to him as future Ozeki or soon to be Ozeki Shodai. And he's finally come into his own. And frankly, it's glorious. But I'd love to hear some reactions because we haven't filmed a podcast since before the Aki Basho. Josh, why don't you start us out with reactions to Shodai and his promotion to Ozeki?
Sure. I think it's great for Shodai. We've all been cheering for him for a long time and hope he can step himself up. He dedicated himself to improving, and he did it, and well done. Okay, fun stops there. I mean, I got to tell you, I think this may be an 8-7 tournament for Shodai.
Yep.
I think there are certain Rikishi who tend to really be affected by the attention and the activity that comes after a Yusho. And I think that, while he's proud and a lot of people are proud of his achievement, he also seems to be a bit bewildered to me in terms of some of his comments and the attention that's come to him in the media.
Yeah, he's overwhelmed.
Yeah, but I think what's great is that, he's become a lot more expressive on the dojo recently. And my sincere hope is that we don't lose the joy and enthusiasm that had been added to his game, because I think that's what made people really start to love him after an up and down start to life in the top division for him, all those years back.
Yeah, it was interesting that the Sumo Association sort of waived their travel restrictions to send him on a victory lap tour of his home region, and people turned out in droves. So I'm guessing a lot of really good food from home and a lot of really good adult beverages from home. And, we've seen it before with Ozeki after they make promotion. It's like there's about a 30-day hangover that takes a while to shake off. Andy, as a man who's probably lived that more than a couple of times, any comments?
I guess I'm very happy for him, but the little, I guess the other side of that, the other edge of that sword is that it really wasn't a big test Basho. It was a little bit of disappointment there. I mean, it started out with Asanoyama's, I guess, lackluster start.
Who called it?
Very lackluster start there. But I'm excited for what he and Asanoyama bring to it. I think that they're what sumo kind of, at least the sanyaku, lacks right now is some health and consistency.
Yes.
And so I'm hopeful that the two of them will at least pick up 9 or 10 wins. I've got hopes that both of those guys will be in there for the long haul. I mean, I guess I've been just hoping for another Kiseno Sato before the Yokozuna promotion. I mean, he was
Yep. He was a machine.
when we had Goedo and Koto Shogiku up there. I mean, I was always referring to them as the Karaban twins. And I'm very, very eager to see the two of these guys. And the reason I'm not bringing up Taka Keisho is because I do know that he had that that one little injury. Seems I guess not so little injury that it does seem to crop up a little bit. But he has improved. He had a pretty strong tournament there. And so I've got hopes that the three of them will really perform pretty well this tournament. But as far as long term, I'm looking at Shodai and Asanoyama to really be long-term Ozeki, and I think that this will be an exciting era that we're seeing begin.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned it, Andy, and it's certainly out there like a giant throbbing pimple for this one. Yokozuna participation. Hakuho had a number of medical treatments between July and September, and it was kind of passed around that maybe he'll participate in November or maybe he won't. And Kakuryu is still looking hurt, but the Sumo Association recognized that they had a weakness with no joint training taking place, and so they decided they were going to have a sort of quarantine joint training inside the Kokugikan in the practice arena downstairs. And Hakuho showed up and was generally kicking everyone's ass. But that's still really no guarantee of Yokozuna participation. Josh, do you have any thoughts about if we're going to face another Nokozuna Basho this November?
No, I don't think we will. Okay, so we start with Kakuryu. I think he almost certainly isn't going to be around. As of the time we're recording this, I don't think there have been any reports of him doing any sumo. He's in bad shape, and I think the big deal is that he obviously needs his citizenship issues resolved. And I think there's sometimes people get a little bit crossed up on what's required. He is a Yokozuna. He is able to become a sumo elder and become an oyakata, but you can't do that unless you have full citizenship. That's the rules. So, right now he's kind of hanging in there, and he's had some stern language from the Yokozuna Deliberation Committee, and but I don't think we'll see him this time. In terms of Hakuho, Genki isn't the word I would use, but it certainly looks like he's making every effort to present himself to certainly to the media and get himself fit and tuned up. And, I think it would be kind of weird in some ways if he didn't show, given that, to your point, Bruce, he was very present and assertive at those practice sessions. And I think at this stage, logically, he shouldn't be the favorite because there's never a favorite anymore, right?
Right.
But he's still the man to beat from day one. And to be honest, I don't know if any of us thought that would be the case at the end of 2020.
Yep, I completely agree. So Andy, there's a real question about Kakuryu. There's definitely an intent to have him take up a specific elder role, the one given up by his oyakata upon his death not that long ago. But there's the thorny bureaucratic question of his citizenship, and nobody on planet Earth does bureaucracy like Japan. The British come close, but they can't quite make it to Japanese level. But thoughts about the Yokozuna, Andy?
As far as the participation, I think I agree with Josh that it'll be brief, if any. Hopefully they'll sit and heal. I know that they're feeling the pressure, but I hope that the pressure to participate is dampened a bit by kind of the expectation from the new Ozeki, and I kind of use that as not just Shodai as new Ozeki, but as that triumvirate that you're really kind of looking for who is the next Yokozuna.
Yep.
And I hope that kind of puts a bit of a damper on the pressures to for the Yokozuna to perform. I know Hakuho was participating in the practices, but I mean, ever since I mentioned Kisano Sato earlier, he was pretty famous for having great practices with Takayasu
Yep.
and then going Kyujo after 3 or 4 days and giving up Kimboshi or two. I think that if either of these guys participate, you are looking at a raft of Kimboshi. So the Joy are probably salivating at at
Oh,
that
we're going to
prospect.
talk about the Joy soon. Have no fear.
So yeah, I don't think that either of them are going to show up, and certainly not in. I mean, they're not in their prime form, and I
Yep.
hope that they come back in a form that approximates that.
So, yeah, the focus really is on the Ozeki this time around because everyone's kind of curious if any of them can elevate. We had that discussion in September about Asanoyama, who more or less did the human thing, succumbed to the pressure, and it took him a few days to get his sumo legs back, and then he did dominate following that. But we've really got a supercharged sanyaku this time. The named ranks are populated by two former Ozeki in the form of Terunofuji and Takayasu, both of which they're not quite Ozeki form, but they're freaking formidable. We've got the mainstay in Mitake Yumi, and I swear that it's going to be like some university chair where it's sort of like the Mitake Yumi Sekiwaki spot, and a hard charging newcomer in Takanosho. Andy, thoughts about this turbocharged set of named ranks, and how much trouble do you think that they might give not only the Ozeki but Hakuho if he decides he's going to give it a try?
That's the thing, is that I think that the lower Sanyaku ranks are going to be a big challenge for the any of the Yokozuna that decide to participate, and they'll be hunting for some Ozeki blood because
Right.
these are guys who have won Yusho in the form of Mitakeyumi and Terunofuji, both of them twice, and Takayasu once won so bad. But the thing is, they are a bit they all have their injury issues,
Well,
and so
I think you hit it. They all have something to prove, except for
yeah.
Takanosho.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the thing is I'm very curious to see how Takanosha does this time around. He may be very ready to kind of prove himself
Yeah.
as but I kind of say that with, or at least hope for that with every Komusubi and Sekiwake that comes up now. I'm like, is he going to be somebody with some staying power up there? I'm not. I'm not thinking that Takanosho will be that. Um, uh, I don't think that he will be a Goedo who will stick around at Sekiwake or like Mitakeyumi sticking around up there for a long period of time. But we have Mitakeyumi right there, and I think that really it depends on the ticking time bomb injuries with Mitakeyumi, Terunofuji, and Takayasu to see if they um, are hobbled by them at all, or if they're able to, I guess, live up to their talents.
So, Josh, you're the one who suggested this topic. It's a great topic. The supercharged Sanyaku. Got to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah. If you've been a fan of sumo during this sort of late Hakuho era, right, the final chapter of the
Yep.
Hakuho era, there's been a lot of everything in terms of the rest of the cast of characters. And that's really what we see here in this group of Sanyaku. You got a lot of, some guys coming back. You have some guys that are making their name now. You have, the return of a couple of stars who really failed to make their mark on the Ozeki rank. And in Terunofuji's case, however, provided an even better redemption story than perhaps he could have at that rank. Whether or not he makes it back to Ozeki, to have accomplished what he has and to have come this far, it continues to be incredible. He can yet go further. We may see that. You have the widely recognized next generation top stars, Asanoyama and Takakeisho. You talk about Takanosho, he's massively improved, and I think he's benefited from Takakeisho's success and the ability to practice with him. And you want an early regrettable prediction. I think he may be the East Sekiwake in January.
Oh,
I think he may have a better tournament than Mitakayumi. It wouldn't surprise me for Mitakayumi to Makikoshi this time. You have this moment of delivered promise that we've just seen from Shodai, and that leaves Mitakayumi just continually overshadowed by everyone else's success, right? So there's really, for me, a lot of intrigue in this group. And I think sumo being what it is, there aren't enough wins to go around for all of them to achieve what they're each looking to do this time.
Yeah, it's going to, the ultimate zero-sum gain is going to be played out daily in Tokyo. And I think it's going to be possibly one of the most brutal tournaments we've seen in a while. But to add to the level of brutality, following close on the heels of the sanyaku are the top 5 ranks of the maegashira, the rest of the joi-jin. Is it going to be a meat grinder, or is it going to be a constant plague to these sanyaku hopefuls? I mean, we've got Kiribayama and Wakataka Kage who are inhabiting the top of the rank and file for the first time. Young, strong, enthusiastic. They don't understand or really even give a rat's rear end about any limitations that they have. They're going to go put it on the sand every single day. You've got Onosho, who's obviously, he's the kind of Rikishi who really gives it his all. You've got Tobizaru, who in interviews following Aki complained a bit that he didn't do more. All right, so you've got this upcoming crop of what's going on. You've got this upcoming crop of hard charging young Rikishi. You've got these sort of giants that are in the sanyaku. It looks to be a storm front of absolutely massive potential. Josh, what are your thoughts about, just to add another layer of blood and gore on top of what we already think is going to be some brutal stuff? What do you have to say?
I think Kagayaki's in for a tough time. I think that.
Yes. Okay. So let me rewind. Yeah. Who's going to have the ugliest Makikoshi out of this group? And I just heard Kagayaki. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think he's in for a tough time. I'll talk about a couple other people in a second, but he's done really well to reach Maegashira 3. He's only had one bad tournament in the last year, but I think, especially if Hakuho comes back, this is going to be a challenge too far for him, because some of those names you just mentioned, Bruce, there's pressure above and below, immediately around him. And this guy takes one step forward and half a step back. I think one of the 2 top-ranked Maegashira that you mentioned, Kiribayama and Wakataka Kage, one of them is going to have a pretty deep Makekoshi, maybe a 5 and 10 or something like that. But they both improved massively. In fact, as you were saying that, it just came to my mind that, Wakataka Kage's got a new stable master, Sokokurai, former Sokokurai, who we all know and love. And amazingly, he's already surpassed his stable master's highest rank in this tournament on this Banzuke. So, already a great achievement. I think one of him or Kiribayama will do well, maybe the other one not so much. But I just have a little bit more faith in them at this level than I do someone like a Kagayaki right now.
Okay. All right, Andy. The top 5 ranks, who's going to have the most brutal Makikoshi out of that?
Y'all picked the exact one that I had my eyes on there.
Kagayaki?
The thing is, Tobizaru, he's up there for the first time, and that's something that, when Ichinojo or Teranofuji or Enho, any of the young up-and-comers comes up really, really quickly, sometimes they're able to actually exceed your expectations. Kagayaki is a known product. Yep. These guys have already wrestled. They've battled him. They know who he is. He's not going to be bringing any surprises. And so I do think that he's a bit higher than his capabilities, but I do think that there are a lot of people up there who are also in the same boat. So he may surprise and get a Kachikoshi, but I mean, I agree. I think that he would be a prime candidate for a 1 in 14, 2 in 13, have a really, really rough time up there.
14?
But I mean, Okinomi has had those tournaments. Onosho has had those tournaments,
Sure.
but that's usually when they're hiding an injury, or I mean, when there's something, when there's an issue.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
it,
1 in 14
but
is walking Kyujo.
well, and that's the thing. I think that Kageaki doesn't need to be hiding an injury to not to have a deep Makekoshi up there.
Okay, well, I've got to weigh in on who my candidates are, and I'm sure people are going to want to throw things at their computer screen, but I have got to tip the most powerful Makekoshi in all of sumo, and that's Hokuto Fuji. I love the guy. I love his sumo, but no one can fight as hard or as brilliantly as he does and still lose. So that will be that's my pick for who's going to get their head handed to them this time around. So
Hopefully he'll move forward.
hopefully so. So let's pivot to happier subjects. I can't even begin to sum up the amount of joy and enthusiasm I have that Ura is back in the salaried ranks. He's back in the pink. Yeah, he's at the bottom of Juryo, but anyone who's caught on YouTube or other channels some of his matches as he fought his way up knows that this guy's body is nothing like the sort of teddy bear, panda bear sort of format that his first run was in. The guy got bored. He got lower body injuries. He lifted weights. He lifted a lot of weights. He lifted cars. He lifted buildings. His grip strength is enough to crush granite, I think, at this point. People who have faced him in the lower ranks have they know that they're about to face somebody who's got Kinboshi and it's going to be a rough ride. I think even those people were a little surprised by what kind of sumo Ura can put out. Josh, some opinions about the man in pink coming back to the salaried ranks.
So last year this time I was in Fukuoka for what was the last Basho I've been able to attend, and I had meant to take Hatsu off and then get back into it. As we know, the world has changed a bit in the meantime.
Oh, yeah.
So the last live sumo experience that I had was there, and this was the tournament that Ura made his latest comeback. It's where it started. And we often talk about the things that make sumo special and makes it different. And I think one of those things is certainly at the lower levels of the sport, the accessibility that fans have to various Rikishi. And he was fighting that tournament at Jonidan 106.
Yep.
And fans came at the start of the day to see him. And because afterwards, because of how the venue's laid out, fans wait for him. And he was so gracious to pose for photos with kids and autographs. And I think it's the most amazing thing to me about his comeback, and this is what I'm getting to, is that someone who gave people in the sumo community so much joy for a brief period of time, several years ago. I mean, you're looking at 3-4 years ago now that he was in the top division, he was in Juryo. He's still absolutely loved by fans.
Oh, yes.
And he's dropped 3 matches in the last calendar year. So if he's able to continue success that even approaches that in Juryo this time, I think it will only add to his incredible story, and I think it will only add to the love that those fans have for him.
All right, Andy, thoughts about Ura?
Well, and the thing is, he had that success without the size of a Terunofuji. I mean, he's a pretty small guy, but then he came back just swole. And you could see the fear in his opponent's eyes when they would have to face him down in the lower divisions. I mean, the thing is, when you're in the lower divisions, a lot of times you will face former Makuuchi wrestlers. And you'll see big guys down there who end up not really being all that competitive, but Ura was just
Oh yeah.
throwing everybody
Well, he
around.
had this approach of, all right, nothing personal, but let's get this out of the way.
And that was the thing. It's like he knows ingenious ways to win, and I think that kind of like and ingenious ways to throw people, and that put some fear in people's eyes.
Oh yeah.
And you look down there at the bottom of Juryo, there are some guys down there who are going back to Makushita. I don't think Ura will be one of them. I think
Yes.
Ura
He may
is.
send some of them there.
I mean, I don't think that Ura is going to be picking up any Kimboshi soon. Um, but I do think that, and he may. Well, I said this with Terunofuji that he would hit Juryo and stick around for a little while, and well, we saw what happened with Terunofuji. He ended up winning the freaking Makuuchi, and but I really think it with Ura, he's not going to be back up in Makuuchi yet. I think he's going to hang around in Juryo, and this will slow his rise a bit. But I think that he's not headed back to Makushita, that's for sure.
Yeah, so Japan still loves Ura. I think in the past week there was a story published about some little old lady who had like saved up all of her pennies and bought him this Kesho Mawashi. And you read that stuff and you go, you can't buy publicity like that. Not there's no way to do that. But all right, so seeing as we're talking about Juryo, let's talk about some of the things that are going on in Juryo. It's now littered with the broken men who can't maintain their rank in the top division. I'm talking about Koto Shogiku, Shohozan, and Ishura, who are all now down in Juryo, along with some others like Nishikigi and Chiyomaru, who have been, top division regulars. If Juryo can be thought of as the farm club for the top division, what are all these guys doing clogging up the gears? Josh, any opinions on that?
Well, I mean, there's still a couple interesting prospects making their way through. I think, to Andy's point a minute ago, I think because you have some of these guys coming down, it's enabled folks to kind of run through Juryo a little bit quicker, maybe than we would have anticipated in the past, and that may continue to be the case with these names, Bruce, that you mentioned coming down. I mean, so get into it a little bit. I think I'm a little surprised that Koto Shogiku carried on. He doesn't need to. Maybe he wants to keep kind of packing the money away for a future stable that he might want to open. Yeah. I don't know. He apparently says he feels that he has sumo left in his body. That's a little hat tip to our friend Kinta Mayama for digging out that quote. I think the real shame is that if he's just going to turn up and make up the numbers and none of us can go to Japan to see him, then it would be good to get that, the Koto Bauer backbend one last time. That's the joy that he can give to us at this stage because his sumo doesn't necessarily do it. Shohozan doesn't have a kabu. He doesn't have an elder name. I don't know if that's his intention. So likewise, he may just be trying to earn until he can't. Yep. These guys should both be able to do enough at the Juryo level to be fine or even get promotion and bounce back. I think Ishiura is maybe bracketed in a little bit of a different category to both of them in so much as he's a little bit younger. And he's also yo-yoed for a while. And so he's someone who has probably maxed out his ceiling. He has not maxed out his gains. But I can see him just kind of continuing to bounce up and down for another couple years, whereas the other guys are probably going one way.
All right, Josh, thoughts about some of the broken guys from the top division who are finding themselves in Juryo, possibly on either a recovery or an exit path?
Well, I mean, I think that Ikioi is, painfully on his way out.
Yep. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. I got the sumo bug in the last few weeks. YouTube's been throwing 2015 and 2016 videos from Kentama Yama at me daily. And I watch some of these guys. I watch Ura, I watch Ikioi, and like Ikioi was in pain back then too. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and the thing is, Ikioi was in pain, but he was able to at least pick up like an 8 and 7,
Yes.
and that's what now it's like he struggles to get one or two, and he never wants to take the day off. And so if we're wondering who's going to retire first, I'm wondering if it may be Ikioi. But the thing is, a lot of these guys may be Aminishiki like, where they're waiting the uh, until they're gonna drop out of Sekitori, and then I mean when it looks like, I guess when it's a done deal that they're gonna drop out of Sekitori,
Yep.
then they may retire. But Chio Otori is sitting over there on Juryo 7, and he's somebody who was not afraid to I guess hang around in Makushita for quite a while. And so I mean with Kodo Shogiku and Shohozan, I kind of think that they're in Ikio's boat of they may retire, but Ishira, I think he may be somebody who could make a drop, but then come back. So it's a little bit. I guess they're definitely unknown products down there, and I hope that they'll be able to at least skate by with decent makikoshis or kachikoshis, and we'll see them again next tournament. But with all of them, the retirement may be within the next year.
So one last topic to close out this segment. As with all things in sumo, there's pressure from behind, and I've frequently said that the top end of Makushita is probably some of the best sumo you can see at any time. And I think that this time around we may really have that underscored and in bold face. So you've got a number of names that we talk about in Sumo Nerdland. Naya Yago looking like he's finally healthy again. Shirashi, who was forced into Kyujo due to COVID-19 sweeping through his Heia, but was granted forgiveness to keep his rank because it wasn't his fault. Um, Andy, some thoughts about the top end of Makushita?
I think that the greatest story up there at the top end is Terasawa. I think that if he actually cracks into the sanyaku, geez, if he actually cracks into Sekitori status after having his Mawashi stolen, well, I think that
Again with the
everybody
stolen
is
Mawashi story.
yeah, everybody's gonna put their hang their mawashi up to be like to be swiped. I mean, I'm wondering if there are gonna be copycats about that. Because
No. You gotta someday they're going to catch these people on hidden camera, and it's going to be like 4 or 5 little old ladies. You mark my words.
well, hey, but then the gory details of the I guess the rabbit's remains that the lucky rabbit's foot that he
TMI.
finally like got rid of, and now he picks up a Yusho. I'm pretty. I think that will be a very interesting story, but I do have big hopes for Yago coming back.
Yeah.
Naya, and seeing how far he can go. I think Yago, I mean, obviously Yago has the experience of any of them up there, and so he'll probably be the first one back in. But I'm kind of gunning for some Terasawa.
All right, Josh. Um, what do you think about the joi-jin for Makushita? Is it going to be competitive this time, or are we looking at a number of people in the top 5 ranks faltering, as so frequently happens?
No, I think it should be extremely competitive, and beyond that top 5, probably all the way down to 16. I mean, not that obviously that many people have a chance of going up unless they Zensho, but Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of names. I think, when you kind of tie that into what we were talking about before with the folks up in Juryo, you have a lot of old guys up in Juryo, and it used to be the case that you had a lot of old guys also clogging up the top of the Makushita Joy, but you actually have really over a dozen exciting youngsters in there right now. I think if I'm going to talk about two, I'd say, you mentioned Naya, his whole family's doing really well right now in sumo, all three of them. One of his brothers also cracked Makushita this time, and he should be able to do enough to go up this tournament. But the one that is really intriguing to me, actually, it's Makushita 15, so he would need a Zensho, is Hoku Tenkai. And for me, he's the biggest story because fans of lower division sumo will know him as the nephew of Takanoiwa. And after all of the drama of the Haramafuji incident and then the Takanoiwa incident, it was initially challenging for him to even find a stable. But he's a real talent who actually continues to improve, and he's in for a real test this time. But a Kachikoshi would be a great result. I think the real shame is that had history been different and had we been living in a parallel sumo universe, we could have ostensibly seen him and his uncle, at least maybe in Juryo concurrently. And it wouldn't have been far-fetched if not for, the scandal that Takanoiwa could still be at that level, this year and next year. So that's one name that I'm really watching this time. And the other one that, we just have to talk about, I think, is Hokuseiho, who is Hakuho's latest monster prodigy. Our friend John Gunning has already tipped him to go all the way. He's unbeaten so far in his sumo career. He's up at the top of Sandame this time. It would be surprising if he wasn't all the way up at the top of Makushita next tournament. And just for people who don't know, this guy he's 18, 19. He's already a few inches taller than the likes of Ikioi and Ichinojo. So just to give an idea of how big he's going to be when he fills out, is just absolutely enormous, and he's a monster talent. So that's another one to look out for.
Well, with that, we're going to bring our first segment to a close. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Josh. We'll have another segment coming up where we cover sumo news and our always regrettable predictions. But for now, that's it. And thank you all for watching. And remember, for sumo, it's Tachiai.